Hi, everyone, and welcome to our short conversation today about accountability and anti-corruption commitments going forward, in particular as it pertains to the Indonesian presidency starting next year. My name is Jean Scrimger, and I'm the current co-chair of the C20 Anti-Corruption Working Group. Over the past year, we have worked with over 100 civil society organizations across dozens of countries to ensure that C20 priorities are included and represented in the G20 process. As we wind down the Italian G20 presidency, we are presented with an opportunity to reflect on last year and where there are opportunities to build and amplify on the lessons that we learned going forward. As many of you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has pushed almost 124 million people into extreme poverty. Corruption has been at the heart of the pandemic and has created significant opportunities for graft, which have undermined progress with an estimated cost to developing countries coming up to about 1.26 trillion annually. Corruption threatens the integrity of markets. It undermines fair competition, it distorts resource allocation, destroys public trust, and undermines the rule of law. And so, rightfully so, between 2008 and 2019, a total of 128 commitments were made by the G20 member countries on crime and corruption. Over the years, G20 members have made much progress and continue to build on their anti-corruption efforts. During the pandemic, 19 countries have adapted and strengthened existing mechanisms to monitor public health procurement, including dedicated task forces and audits. However, overcoming corruption and realizing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is going to require a collective effort from all our member countries. Today, we will hear more from those who are leading the G20 and C20 efforts in Indonesia next year, their priorities, and how we can live up to the commitments that have come before us. We will also hear from my colleague Sanjita, who developed a G20 commitment tracker, and how we can use the coming Indonesian presidency to develop and build on those hard-fought commitments made over the past decade. I will be asking each presenter to introduce themselves shortly and provide a short introduction to the importance of the C20 and G20 processes and how we can use the mechanisms to support accountability for anti-corruption going forward. After that, there will be a short conversation between the three or four of us, and we really do ask you to ask any questions that you would like to pose to the speakers in the chat, and we will get to them as soon as we can. I'm going to ask Ms. Diane Navianti to start, and looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Jean, Ms. Sanjita, and C20 colleagues and civil society colleagues, and also Mr. Danang, good evening, also for my Indonesian colleagues in Jakarta. First, allow me to thank the C20 for inviting us to participate to the C20 Summit. My name is Diane Navianti. I'm the Director of Anti-Corruption Training and Education in Corruption Eradication Commission, Republic of Indonesia, well known as KPK. And today, Jean and Sanjita, I will speak on behalf of G20, Indonesia G20 ACWG chair. As Jean already mentioned, that Indonesia will take the presidency of G20 in the 2022, and we in KPK as the Indonesian G20 ACWG focal point will be chairing the meeting, the ACWG meeting next year, together with Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia, also together with Australia as our co-chair in the 2022. As we all know that G20 ACWG commit to taking and promoting multi-stakeholder approach to preventing and combating corruption by strengthening our partnership with individuals and groups outside the public sector. This is including the civil society. In this regard, many thanks again for the C20 for inviting us, because in this session, I will take the opportunity to share Indonesia key anti-corruption priorities for the Indonesian G20 presidency. I think that's for the beginning, and I hope this tonight's discussion will be making a lot of input for our proposed action plan for the next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And quick introduction from Mr. Danang Widoyoko from Transparency International.
Yes, thank you. I am Danang Widoyoko. I'm the Secretary General of Transparency International Indonesia chapter. So we are part of the Berlin-based Transparency International. And in Indonesia, we are working with the government, political organization, as well as civil society to promote transparency, participatory, and also encouraging the good governance to prevent corruption, both in public as well as in private sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Widoyoko, and my colleague Sanjita Pant from Accountability Lab. You're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you to the G20 for this opportunity. My name is Sanjita, and I'm the Programs and Learning Manager at Accountability Lab, which is a global translocal organization. We make governance work for people around the world, and we do this through three core things. One is around creative campaigns like our integrity icon. The second is around knowledge building through our flagship accountability incubator, for instance. And the third is around ecosystem development by building local coalitions to push for accountability and anti-corruption. And moving on to Jean, your question about why the C20 is important. And I think it provides an important as well as a very relevant space for CSOs like Accountability Lab. Important because it connects policymakers with grassroots voices, not limiting it to the realities and priorities of only the G20 member countries, and relevant because of the shrinking of civic spaces across the world, especially during crises like the COVID-19 pandemic. Really looking forward to our conversation today. Thank you.
Thanks, Sanjita. Okay, so as we start, I wanted to ask Ms. Novianti about the key anti-corruption priorities for the Indonesian G20 presidency and how these priorities really sort of work towards building on the progress from before. I know that you have a short presentation that you'd like to share with the group. Please take it away.
Okay, thank you, Jean. Let me share the file. Okay. Okay, is my voice clear? Yeah, is my voice is clear?
Yes, you can just put it on presentation mode. There we go.
Okay, thank you. So today I will share about our key anti-corruption priorities for our presidency. As we choose the theme of recover together, recover stronger, because we believe that building back to better and stronger after the pandemic is only possible when we continue to unite and work together. And this is the four key anti-corruption priorities for Indonesia government. We understand that corruption is a crime with complex social, political, and economic transnational facet. So we need to enhance our efforts to address the remaining gaps, existing challenges, and emerging difficulties, particularly to raise the implementation of our commitment and obligation under the existing international anti-corruption commitment, especially under the UNCAC. And then in this light, Indonesia has been developed these key priorities. We consult with multi-stakeholder, with experts from relevant ministries and agencies, also with civil society, academia, and international organization. So this is the four key anti-corruption priorities for Indonesian presidency. The first is enhancing the role of audit in tackling corruption. The second is money laundering trend and topologies, especially as in corruption as predicate crime. The third is public participation and anti-corruption education. And the fourth is corruption related to renewable energy. These priorities are relatively unexplored by the G20 ACWG. However, we are confident that our key anti-corruption priorities will have positive and meaningful value added in the work of G20 ACWG. So I hope that this forum, after we share it, we will get the support also from the C20 and civil society in enhancing, promoting these priorities. In ACWG, most of anti-corruption issues were discussed in the form of G20 high-level principles. The high-level principles are designed to assist G20 countries and other interested countries as a reference and framework for tackling corruption. And this is need to be followed by effective implementation at both domestic and international level. I agree with Jean and Sanjita that we need to effectively implementation of all our commitment. And this is to monitor and evaluation about our commitment. The G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group has established what we call as G20 ACWG Accountability Report. So this document will track and update the implementation of our past commitment in selected area. So you can monitor the implementation of our commitment through our G20 Accountability Report. We believe that this commitment manifests differently in different areas, and the 2022 report, you will see that it after the Italian presidency, they will deliver the report, and this will focus on anti-corruption strategic tools on these following emerging areas: integrity and transparency in infrastructure development, countering corruption in custom, and tackling corruption in sport. This is based on following past G20 ACWG commitment. And then this is the challenge. The challenge of the implementation of anti-corruption commitment. Each country in the G20 progress differently from one another because we have our own priorities and also face different challenges. And then regardless, this is still important for G20 countries to enhance the implementation of existing international anti-corruption frameworks and mechanisms. And this is necessary to improve our collaboration effort by identifying the common challenges and initiating collective action for more effective implementation to addressing these gaps. So one effective way to achieve that is by sharing best practices. As a starting point, we can take advantage of G20 ACWG Compendium and Accountability Report. Indonesia is planning to develop two G20 ACWG Compendium. The first is on money laundering on offenses with corruption as predicate crime. And the second is public participation and anti-corruption education. With that being said, this compendium can go further by developing recommendation for G20 countries. Also, we are planning to conduct set events in our presidency to facilitate panels that enable us to share those best practice. We are also planning to hold G20 OECD Global Anti-Corruption and Integrity Forum. This is where maybe the civil society can join the forum. And also the 5th joint meeting between G20 ACWG and OECD Working Group on Bribery. With this meeting, we hope that we can continue to learn from one another in a deeper and more technical ways. For publication, we are publish our commitment to raise awareness of the public for better understanding what we are doing on the last 11 years since the establishment of G20 in SCWG in 2010. The publication can be accessed through this UNODC dedicated to G20 SCWG, and Indonesia through KPK has also published the book that called the Indonesian Global Commitment, especially in ANCAC and G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group. So Indonesia, about the monitoring and evaluation, this is one of the questions that asked by the C20, how are we going to monitor the evaluation? In Indonesia, we have the working group is led by Sherpa, which is Indonesian Coordinating Ministry of Economic Affairs and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This Co-Sherpa conduct regular discussion to follow up the commitment we established under the G20. And we also develop an annual implementation book that compile the implementation in domestic level. It has really helped us to track everything and initiate more discussion by the focal point of each working group to the relevant stakeholder. So this is how we monitor in global and in the national level. And please be patient about how can civil society can be engaged. History, especially in Indonesia, has proven that CSO, civil society organization, have attempted to accelerate the corruption eradication efforts in Indonesia. So it play a major role in Indonesia. Significant role in exposing and taking the problem of corruption into public domain, so in the transparency, and have made a number of impressive achievements. Civil society also encompass the initiating of a number of strategic policies and helping us in monitor government policies and spending, especially in handling the COVID-19 pandemic. KPK also facing challenges in combating corruption. To overcome this challenges, the KPK received massive public support, particularly from civil society, media, academia, and university students. I would also take this opportunity to deliver my highest appreciation to all civil society who have been supporting us in over the years. Finally, this is I think this is some idea about how we can engage between the government or the G20 SCWG with civil society. The first, we can continue enhance our interaction and cooperation with other relevant work stream within the G20 from SCWG with engagement group, including the C20. And then we also need to be more dialogue between C20 and G20. Particularly regarding the C20 policy pack that leads into the G20 SCWG's policy recommendation and statement. And also, we hope there will be more collaboration to introduce our reflective works at G20 session atau panels and other international fora. Okay. We believe that the outcome for today's discussion will be important to the next step, that priorities issue development that we, as next G20 presidency, we are currently working on the priorities issue, this priority issue. We sincerely hope that the engagement and cooperation between G20, SCWG, and C20 is getting closer and stronger. Zian, I will stop now and give the floor back to you, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Novianthi. That was really great. And you also covered many of the questions that I actually wanted to ask anyway. So that's great. I think what I was going to think about do is actually just ask you one question, and then we can move to the C20 lead. And I think one of the, from Indonesia for next year, and I think one of the questions that I wanted to ask was, you know, as we talk about, you know, these priorities being relatively unexplored from previous, you know, the audit, money laundering, public participation, renewable energy. Do you think that there are any sort of lessons that we can learn from previous years to ensure that, you know, this is just not another additional 4 commitments, but that we, you know, that we can build on some of those from before, in particular from the C20 side? So how can we support you to work on these commitments, but also to make sure that it's not just another set of commitments, that this is sort of built on from some of the previous ones?
Okay, thank you for the question. I hope I get the question right. about to make sure that these priorities will be implemented and not only in the document, right? Okay. For this two, the audit and public participation and education, I think it is the audit. We feel after we did a lot of FGD with a lot of stakeholders, we believe in this pandemic years, the audit for the is very effective in detecting the fraud or the potential corruption in the pandemic, these 2 years in the pandemic, and we believe that it will be a good example to implement in the next year. So it's like fraud detection in the beginning. So before they go into the corruption as a crime, we can detect it earlier. And the public education and also the public participation and education, I think it's very important too in this next year, because we believe that corruption cannot be eradicated only by the law enforcement, because we saw it in Indonesia. We have a lot of law enforcement enforced, but the corruption still high. So we see the need, the importance of education and the prevention. And I think this is also can be support by the C20, because in Indonesia we also have the society to together with KPK to do the education and promoting anti-corruption to society. So not only KPK who promote education and anti-corruption, there are also civil society and general society also promoting. So I think C20, maybe we can talk later about how we can C20 can support us, but I believe that this is on also the C20 concern about the public participation and education. I hope this is answering your question.
No, that was excellent, and I think as the C20 we very much agree that that tackling anti-corruption is not just about law enforcement. It's a more holistic challenge. I'd like to call on Mr. Danang Widoyoko from Transparency International, who will be very involved with from the C20 side next year. I know Mr. Widoyoko has also got a presentation that he'd like to share with us. So take it away.
Yes, thank you, Jim, for the opportunity. Let me share my short presentation. Yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Can you see it? Yes. Thank you for inviting me to represent the civil society, and actually G20 will provide opportunity not only for the Indonesian civil society but also global civil society to demand the member countries to meet their promise and commitment. And let me start with the main issue of Indonesian civil society. Yes, we have three main issues: corruption and transparency of beneficial ownership, then natural resource, destructive fishing, and then connected to political corruption. And the third is corporate integrity and digital capitalism. Let me start with the latest report, the global report of ICIG, International Investigative Journalist Consortium. So it's just in time. So our discussion just in time, because yesterday tons of media reporting the Pandora Papers as subsequent investigative reporting of after Panama Papers and then Paradise Papers that involve high-level politicians, rich people, and global companies that using the shell companies that enjoy the various benefits such as the low tax rate. Also establishing shell companies is not automatically, illegal action, but at least they will enjoy low tax rates and also an equation of the, conflict of interest, because those that involved, especially Indonesia, also a member of the current cabinet. And this practice of the shell companies also make the asset recovery of corruption is not easy to trace. So that's why we encourage for the transparency and beneficial ownership. And the second issue related with the natural resources, because Indonesia still depend on the natural resources, and the names that appear in Panama Papers, Paradise, and recent Pandora Papers usually generate profit and wealth from the natural resources. And we also have problem with the illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishings. And to deal with these issues, we have to build a global cooperation. This is the issue that we cannot solve from Indonesia. And also this issue is not only Indonesian issue. I guess other countries also facing the similar issue. How natural resources, how their businesses also connected with the global companies, and also have the problem with the shell companies in tax haven countries. And recent issue, I call it digital capitalism, that need to be regulated and prevented to become predatory capitalism. Because yes, in the beginning, like social media, people consider that it's a tool of the liberation, but in the end, it can be a tool of the manipulation. And also recently in Indonesia, Gojek is like the famous ride-hailing, similar to Uber in many countries. In the early, it's just like providing job for people, but in the end, it's like it could be predatory capitalism, because they call it cooperation, but in fact, they employ labor without proper right, without fair price share, and without any facilities that labor movement has struggled for many years. And that's we need global cooperation to regulate digital capitalism. And then the final remarks from me is that the problem of global populism, democratic regression, and decreasing public space have affected Indonesian civil society. That following that, it affects also the work of civil society to monitor the government and also the power holder. And finally, anti-corruption actually struggle to hold power holders accountable, to be accountable in public and private sectors, but also in the local level, national, as well as in the global level. So that's why cooperation among the not only countries, but also civil society, not only member of G20, but the general and global civil society is very important for our future advocacy. So thank you. This is my short presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warioka, and thank you for keeping it very short. A quick question before we move on to our last speaker. How would you, based on your experience, how would you suggest, or what are some of the tools and ideas that you have that the C20 should be employing to assist and work best with the G20 and in the new presidency?
Yes, thank you. Of course, we will take the promise and the commitment, the previous commitment. I have just read quickly the book that my KPK college has shown to you, the Indonesian commitment, and of course I see like preventing conflict of interest. That's related with the Pandora Papers. Even we will ask, because several high-level officials that involved in G20 also appear in Pandora Papers. So that's why it is very important for us in a bigger advocacy for the transparency and the beneficial ownership. And that's our civil society homework, to check and to make a list of the government commitments. And I hope also other countries and other civil society to do that. So that's why we can have similar goals to pursue.
Excellent. No, I think that's a really good point. Thank you. And we will swing back to this after Sanjita tells us a little bit more about the anti-corruption tracker and the role that civil society can play around tracking the commitments that the C20 and G20 have made, because as we can see, from the G20 side, we're going to have four sort of buckets of commitments and some underneath that, and we know that the C20 would like to sort of pitch a few ideas too. So, Sanjita. And mute.
Yeah, so I was quickly sharing my presentation. Can you see that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So yeah, I think this is a very relevant time, especially given the Pandora papers that's been released yesterday, which again highlights some of the challenges in actually implementing some of the commitments around anti-corruption that have been made by the G20. So I'm going to quickly go through some slides to talk about some of these challenges as well as opportunity in G20's accountability for its anti-corruption commitments. First, I would just like to share some figures to illustrate some of the challenges. And I think we've talked about this before, and what Jean also mentioned earlier about how the new commitments or the new priorities are going to fit in with what's been done previously. Because what we've seen over the past years is that there's been the number of commitments have basically been increasing. And so if you just look at some of the figures, in 2020, it was only 3, but this year, 2021, there were almost 17, or there were 17 anti-corruption commitments made by the G20. And the problem is also it's the same. So it's so that and Jean also mentioned earlier about how the total number of commitments over the years have crossed more than 100 anti-corruption commitments, and these are not always new commitments, but each year similar commitments are being repeated. And what this means is that we're not accounting for progress or setting any timeline to achieve them. So it just feels like commitments are being made in different areas without really accounting for them. And also, if you look at the language that is being used in declaration as well as the work plans, it's often very guarded, which makes it extremely difficult to track progress. And I've included some examples, like the language would be like "will consider" or "explore the possible adherence to." So it really makes it very difficult. Although the G20 itself says that it's going to hold itself to account, but with language around that, not really sticking to a specific time-bound commitment, it's really hard to track progress. And the third is around access to information. And this has, again, been extremely challenging because a lot of the reports that currently exist that track or monitor progress are lengthy reports by different agencies, and they are scattered across different websites. So that's another issue for civil societies that, or even the general public, trying to understand where the G20 member countries are in terms of the commitments. And moving on to the next slide. So this is the key asks on anti-corruption accountability by the C20, which is also included in the C20 policy pack for this year. several calls over the years have been made to make time-bound and targeted commitments, as well as to achieve, involve CSOs to draft as well as to monitor work plans and progress. And again, this year as well, the same call is being made out to Indonesia. There's also been there has been some progress by the current presidency, as Diane also mentioned in the beginning and showed us the G20 Anticorruption Resources website to try and fill some of that information gap. This is definitely a step in the right direction, and a lot of but there is also a lot that needs to be done, especially to include a lot of the scattered reports and centralize them in that website, including around monitoring and evaluation. But the good news is that a vast amount of this information already exists, and it is simply a matter of adopting an open and transparent process to collect and share this information, which can ultimately help build trust in the G20 process as well as the institution itself. And this brings me to the tracker that Jean mentioned earlier. So keeping in mind the information gap and how everything has been scattered, Accountability Lab in 2020, so last year, along with input from other organizations within the G20, has developed this G20 anti-corruption commitment tracker, to try and fill some of the existing gap in a very easy to understand way. Like I mentioned earlier, like some of these reports are lengthy, like 200 plus pages that really require time, as well as the language around that is so technical. It's hard for CSOs to really, like, if you're looking to advocate or really understand some of these issues, they are not always written in a easy to understand way. And about just talking about the tracker very briefly, the tracker does not generate any new rankings or information for that matter, but act as a repository of existing evaluations and reports. It is meant to be an open, collaborative tool which can be used by G20 member countries to provide policy updates and by civil society and other engagement groups to push for reforms. The tracker has generated a lot of interest, including from G20 member countries, and we're working on developing it along with other partners. I think I'll just leave it there. This is just a brief introduction of the tracker, but I can talk more about it as we continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sanjita. I think the one question that I had to you is to talk a little bit about the engagement or the importance of the engagement with G20 member countries around the tracker, and how and how G20 member countries can engage with improving the tracker, with building it, etc. You're on mute.
Sorry, I keep forgetting that. Since we developed the tracker, we have, that was last year, we've reached out to G20 member countries to collect feedback and also to get updates, because a lot of the reports that are out there, a lot of the information, the resources are not always up to date. So with that in mind, we reached out to organizations outside the C20 as well as the G20 member countries themselves to collect feedback. And G20 member countries, including Germany, Australia, Saudi Arabia, and Argentina, responded to our call earlier this year and provided updates on some of the policies. Depending on the source and validity of the information, we were able to update the tracker to reflect the latest information. And for example, Germany made us aware that the latest OECD report reflects some of the changes the country has made in adopting some of the recommendations and anti-money laundering legislation by amending their criminal code. Similarly, the US informed us that they are preparing to submit the executive summary for the UNCAC review to ensure compliance with the UNCAC review process. And in terms of how, I think that's the key way, we've been engaging with the G20 so far to collect policy updates, and that's how we'll continue to engage. But it's also, we don't want to isolate just the G20 or the CSOs or other engagement groups. And ideally, in this tracker is meant to be an advocacy tool that can be used by CSOs, but also by the G20 members to engage with others and to use the a tracker to learn from other countries. So let's say there's a country that's made significant progress in a certain area. It's very easy to see the tracker, as you see. I showed in the slide a screenshot of the tracker, and it's really easy to see, like, where countries are making progress. And the tracker was meant to foster learning. So it's not we didn't generate the tracker to name and shame. Rather, it was to promote naming and faming in that sense. Like, positively want to encourage learning through this. And I think that's one of the things that Diana has also talked about, like, trying to bring some learnings from countries. That's where I can see the G20 countries, like, using this tool to build on what has worked for them, but what has not worked, and learn from each other.
Thank you. No, I think that's an excellent response. I think at this time we have another 10-15 minutes for conversation. If any of the audience have questions that they'd like to pose to us, please do so, and we will try to get to them. Before we do that, I wanted to sort of ask both Diane and Danang a question. So we've mostly spoken about the C20 Anti-Corruption Working Group, but as many of you know, there are many other groups, such as the B20 and the T20 and the L20 and the W20. I think how, for next year, how does the C20 plan on engaging with these groups so that we can strengthen both the G20 messages, but also the C20 messages, and so that we can really sort of create a comprehensive set of recommendations and ideas and tools for going forward, in particular to some of the resource packs. Diane, I think let's start with you.
About engaging the other group.
The other working groups, yeah.
The other working group. I believe that in developing our key priorities, we already involving a lot of stakeholders, international organization, and in Indonesia, a lot of ministries and CSO also, civil society. And to engaging in the next year, I think we will see about each priorities. Maybe in the public participation, anti-corruption, we definitely will invite the C20 and in the money laundering, trans anthropology. But we're not yet having the exact plan where we'll invite the B20 and the T20. But I think maybe after this meeting, the C20 can also give us some ideas about how we engage also. But we're opening this opportunity to receive as many inputs, as many support from other fora also in the G20 engaging group. That's our answer. And I think if I may comment about the accountability lab work, the tracking, I think it's very good. I already saw it in your web, and I think it's a very good collaboration that where the civil society can monitor the track or the implementation of the commitment. It's also happened in Indonesia. We have a national strategic anti-corruption plan, and we also monitor by our CSO. So not only the government side, because we can people can accuse that government can claim that they already done ABC, but we also invite the CSO to monitor the national strategy of anti-corruption. That's our appreciation for the track for the accountability lab. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you. And also thank you for the Indonesian government's willingness and excitement about to contribute. It's always nice to know that when we can work together, I think that the product is so much stronger. And Danang, same question to you. I think how, next year, I think traditionally we've often struggled to really make the best use of all these different working groups and getting working together. Have you guys got a plan or an idea of how we should best make sure that we can bring the strength of all these different groups together to support the G20?
Yes, at the moment, I guess, actually, I do not know in detail. Several working groups have been in progress. So yesterday, I just talked with my colleagues in office and said, why civil society and anti-corruption working group just promote or just focus on natural resources or the Pandora Papers? How about the vaccine? How about the pandemic? Oh, yes. It's another group on health working group that working on that. Oh, that's good. So I mean that actually simultaneously several groups is working in different issue, but I guess some of the issue are actually connected or I think we need more time to connect all the issues and then to sit together because I think because the issue is so wide, but actually it's not that wide. I mean, our work in civil society actually is also covered that several issues. So I think that next year we'll be ready to be focused, because at the time we still diverse or dispersed, but I guess in the next 1 2 months we will be together, and then we can make like a general report or like a comprehensive general report on particular issue.
Very exciting. Yeah, definitely. I would definitely encourage all the groups to work together as much as they can. I think one of the questions that came up from both the audience, but also I think throughout both this year and in previous years, gender has not really been mentioned in the draft action plan of this year. How do you think we should best integrate gender, but also other minority groups and inclusion issues into the 4 anti-corruption priorities that the G20 has, but I think similarly to, that the C20 would like to have next year around beneficial ownership and natural resources? And actually, you know what, I'm also going to ask Sanjita here quickly in terms of gender and inclusion in the tracker, and how we can make sure that these issues are well represented across all 3 areas.
Well, I think currently, they're not disaggregated that way. It's not a focus, but definitely that it is becoming a very important. It's being raised more and more in all discussions, especially in the development field, but across every sector, it is coming up as a main issue, and should be the gender lens, in looking into any issue should be. It's a cross-cutting issue, like anti-corruption. It's not just it's not just for one, it's not just specific to one sector. So definitely that needs to be, but in terms of the current commitments, I've not seen it as a it's not been disaggregated in that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Thank you, Sanjita. And I definitely think that there potentially is an opportunity there. I think similarly with youth and how to bring young people into the conversation. Ms. Navianti, have you sort of got any thoughts on how we can sort of bring gender and marginalized groups into some of these conversations, or prioritize some of the thinking around
it? Pardon, may you repeat the question?
So the in the sort of group, the draft action plan for this year, there's very little mention of gender and women and marginalized groups. And I think, and so I just wanted to know how we can make sure that next year we can bring these various groups into into the conversation around the priorities that have been mentioned?
I don't know yet, but I think maybe the C20 can give ideas between the 4 priorities. Which one can we mainstream or inserting the gender right, the gender issues, and in each priorities, maybe the C20 can give us idea where we could insert it. Maybe Mr. Danang and TI Indonesia can also be our counterpart in discussion our development of our key priorities issues, because this is not official yet. This is our proposal to the group, and I hope we hope that the SCWG will receive this our proposal in our presidency in the first meeting, hopefully in the 1st of March. But currently, we are already making some meeting and approach to some countries about inserting this for priorities. So we are hoping that C20 can also give us some ideas and a recommendation about this issue. Thank you, Jim.
Well, we'd be very excited to do so, 100%. So thank you for opening up the space. And I realize, it is a tricky, there are so many competing priorities and so many competing conversations happening around, that trying to sort of ensure that other groups are brought in is a difficult process. But I think we would definitely encourage gender and marginalized groups and inclusion as one of the sort of key cross-cutting issues. I'm not sure, Mr. Warioko, if you have any sort of thing to add on this before we sort of move to our last question.
Yes, of course, how civil society work is not solely, I'm not only representing Indonesia, but actually I'm representing a group of civil society organization. For instance, in natural resources, the impact of natural resources is not only on environmental degradation or corruption, but also gender issue. Also, women is affected with the mining, plantation, and several activists has reported how women affected with in the plantation and also mining practices. So that's why it is very important to rise. And also, like in the fishing issue, also there is a gender, within the fisheries, gender is also part of that issue because women affected of that business sector. So that's why, of course, in our final report or our monitoring, the gender will come out because actually we will work with several NGOs that gender from the beginning will be part of our consideration.
Jean, may I interrupt a little?
Yes,
I want to correct about my previous statement. I must get lost that gender is also mentioned in our action plan 2022 and 2024 that SCWG will continue to improve our understanding of the linkage between gender and corruption to identify ways to prevent and address it, including to the ways in which corruption can affect women and men differently. And we will continue to promote gender equality and empowerment of women, including by mainstreaming it in relevant legislation, policy development, research, project and programs as appropriate and in accordance with fundamental principle of domestic law. So it is included in our action plan, the 2022 and 2024. So maybe we can maybe we can implement it by those documents. So it is already included in the action plan.
No, I think that's very heartening and brilliant. Okay, I think we have just a very few minutes left, and I think just as a last point that I wanted to make, as we know, the G20 is 20 countries, the C20 is 20 countries, but I think so many of these issues cross over so many other countries and can be relevant for so many other countries. I think also as a process, the G20 also sort of works in tandem with things like the OGP and big democracy issues around the world. What do you think we can do next year, and how do you think it would be best for the C20 to support the G20 to really make sure that these issues are not just focused on the G20, but that we can get it out to other parts of the world? Because I think this doesn't necessarily need to just apply to the G20. While the G20 must be responsible for the compliance of the commitments, but how can we make sure that these really great ideas that are coming out are extrapolated further into the world?
Sanjita, please.
No, sorry, that was just.
Okay, in my opinion, I cannot give an ideas before I consulting the group, but I think one of the UNODC work is very good in promoting the work of G20 ACWG. I believe that the web or the publication that UNODC make in their website can be accessed with other countries, not only for the G20 countries. I think it's one of the good ideas, but for the elaborating the G20 works throughout the C20, I cannot answer right now. Maybe we need to be discussed later with the C20 and the C20 Indonesia about the ideas. I think that's my comment. Thank you.
That's great. Sanjita, you had a point.
I was just going to add that the civil society can definitely play, especially organizations that are working with, even Transparency International or Accountability Lab, where we have teams across the world. We can play an important role in making not just the G20 member countries or the countries in the globe are not aware of these issues, who are maybe more plugged into some of these. Or I think in general, I think the mindset around civil society, how different groups see it, even the G20 itself sees civil society just as a watchdog, needs to change. There are experts within civil society with technical expertise around issues such as beneficial ownerships, and they need to be brought into the conversation. They need to be included as equal partners to shape conversations and generate ideas. This is not happening, and it's been brought up again and again, but definitely having that open conversation, linking different issues that are being discussed in different forums together is really important, because I feel like there may be duplication of efforts, and we may be able to save so much time and effort if we just link up some of these issues. And the civil society definitely, like Accountability Lab, we are in these different forums, so we are trying to see where the links can be made. And I think our more civil societies can try and play that role. And also I feel like the civil society themselves need to make governments see that they are a positive force, they represent a positive force rather than a threat, and we need to work around that. And I think what we're trying to do with the tracker is that, trying to be a collaborator and try to help with the processes and build trust in the process itself.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sanjita. Mr. Warioka, you have the last word.
Yes. Of course, it will not only to G20 because of the. Let me give a brief example. The increasing Indonesian, actually from Indonesian example. Now, many companies of Indonesia is not working only in Indonesia. Many companies have expanding their business abroad, including the natural resources. They go to many countries. So that's why if we encourage better, or more environmental friendly, or the meeting the higher standard to Indonesian company will affect also not only Indonesian, but also people in other countries, not only the G20, but also people outside G20. And also the technology also enable Indonesian company, also Indonesian government, not only working inside Indonesia, but also in other countries. So in the end, if our campaign and advocacy successfully influence government Indonesia and also Indonesian business sector, it will affect not only G20, but also other countries. And another important thing is the common problem, like democratic regulation, the shrinking of public sphere. It's not only the problem of Indonesia, it's not unique problem of the G20, but also the problem of many countries in the world. So that's why we have to find like common goals. That's why we can work together. And if our advocacy bring or achieve maybe partial or success, that will be affect not only Indonesia and also G20 members, but also other countries.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to, we've reached the top of the hour, and I'd like to give many thanks to our colleagues and our participants for the really great conversation today. I think it's been really illuminating to hear a little bit more about what the new Indonesian presidency is going to be prioritizing, and sort of their commitment to engaging with civil society in the coming year. And I think Mr. Wadioko, I know you have a big job from civil society side for next year. But I think we would like to ensure that we would that we're here to support, and that the more than 100 civil society organizations that have joined the C20 are very committed to making sure that the Indonesian presidency is one that is successful, and that really is able to reach its goals. Please feel free to get in touch with us anytime. We're very happy to share ideas or thoughts, but also just to be supportive where you need it. And very many thanks to the C20, this year's C20, for allowing us to have this space at the C20 Summit. Thank you, everyone. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And for those of you in Indonesia, a wonderful night. Yeah. Sorry it's so late.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you.
All right, have a good day.